Hello viewers, today's subject is tourism transport, and under this subject we have the topic development of air transport. We will be discussing this episode in the following 5 subheadings. Number 1, hot air balloons and the first flight. Number 2, development of air transport. Number 3, air transport in the post-war period. 4, era of commercial jet. And the last, 5th one is air transport development in India. Introduction. Air travel has become an integral part of today's living. The potential of commercial flights to keep changing the world for better is almost unlimited. Air transport is an important enabler for achieving economic growth and development. Air transport facilitates integration of global economy. It brings harmony of people at regional, national, and international levels. Most of the international travelers prefer air transport because of its comforts, speed, and safety. It helps to generate international trade, promotes tourism, and creates large employment. Even the World Bank has financed many aviation projects because of its importance. Hot air balloons and the first flight. The dream of flying is as old as human civilization. Many people were watching the flying of birds and wishing to fly as the birds. In all ancient civilization, man started making attempts in different ways to fly. In China, kites were constructed and played some mystic role as element between earth and heaven. In most of the stories of Indian mythology, there is the mention of Pushpak Viman, in which god and goddesses used to travel by airplanes. Montgolfier brothers constructed a balloon and discovered the principle of hot air balloons. The flight of the hot air balloons in front of King in Versailles in 1783 is reported as a sensation and a huge spectacle, having seen the first 3 passengers being lifted up, a cock, a sheep, and a dog. It took some further years before Sir George Cayley, who lived between 1773 to 1857, who defined and developed some elementary principles fundamentally important for the future success of flight vehicles. He postulated the principles of flights in his paper, The Art of Flying or Aerial Navigation, during the second half of the 19th century. A lot of important developments have been made in many European countries and in the United States of America. The first flight. The Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, were the 2 Americans who were inventing and building the world's first successful airplane and making the first controlled, powered, and sustained heavier than air human flight on 17 December 1903 at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. In the following 2 years, the brothers developed their flying machine into the first practical fixed-wing aircraft. Their fundamental breakthrough was their further development of 3-axis control, which enabled the pilot to steer the aircraft effectively and to maintain its equilibrium. In 1909, Louis Blériot, a French aviator, made the first airplane crossing of the English Channel. Development of air transport. In the first 50 years since the first aeroplane flew in 1903, aviation is developed entirely as a result of large-scale government spending for defense expenditure in most of the industrialized countries. Defense budgets have paid for practically all air transport development because most of the aviation activities were limited to the military field. However, by the end of the First World War, an important byproduct of military aviation began to evolve. This was the civil air transport, which after a slow startup to the Second World War, developed very fast in the post-war period. It emerged the most important form of long-distance passenger transport, replacing the rail and sea transport. It developed very fast and became very important means of transport for the long distance within the country and for international travel. In the first 10 years of its operation, technical knowledge did not ensure economic safety and reliable large-scale civil operation. The majority of the pioneer aircraft were small, single-engine, one- or two-seat vehicles weighing 760 to 1,500 pounds, loaded and powered with crude piston engines developing 25 to 100 horsepower. The speed were about 40 miles per hour. Four important developments took place during 1920 and 1930, namely, general consolidation of airline companies took place, particularly in Europe. As a result, the airline companies had larger resources and greater stability in their organization. At the same time, various practical problems in the operation of aircraft were identified and addressed. Effective techniques and methods were developed. The development of 2 to 3 engine aircraft took place. As a result, more safety to passengers were assured. The introduction of radio communication and its use as a navigational aid greatly helped for reaching the destination. Europe was well ahead of other countries, including the United States. This period continued to be confined to contact flying condition during daylights only. Map reading remained the primary method of finding the route. During this period, air transport mainly took place in Germany, France, and United Kingdom. By 1930, Japan also developed its air operation. During 1930 to 1940, the Boeing 247, Douglas DC-2 and DC-3 appeared. With the introduction of these vehicles, air transport took a definite shape. During this period, United States of America had also developed its air transport system. The airplane started carrying a good number of passengers in United States during this period. The Big Four, American Airlines, Eastern Airlines, TWA, and Pan American started regular domestic flights. Pan American Airways expanded its operation to overseas throughout Latin America and then across Pacific and the Atlantic. Americans developed its technical leadership both in aircraft and ground equipment. Its operational efficiency was also well developed. In Canada, a considerable growth in the operations of the many small airlines operating north-south services into the underdeveloped area of the north. Most of these small airlines were integrated into Canadian Pacific Airlines under the aegis of CPR in 1942. In the post-war period, Americans made a spectacular expansion in civilian air operation with the new 4 engines, particularly on long-haul routes. Generally speaking, the United States took the lead in air transport development, beating Europe in the post-war period. the U.S. airline companies firmly established themselves with standard equipment throughout the world except the Soviet bloc. Air transport in United States of America in the post-war period. During the 50s, that is between 1950 to 1960, air transport was well established as the most important method of long-distance passenger transport. At the same time, they were also penetrating the medium and even short-haul passengers market also. The United States domestic airlines had completely established themselves as an integral part of the nation's economy. The trunk airlines were by now fully profitable and continued to grow in a fiercely competitive environment. However, the government regulations were there not to make competition uneconomical and destroy the industry. A much smaller development took place during this period, but no less significant for the future was the gradual evolution of helicopter scheduled services in a number of urban areas. These helped to bring air transport into semi-urban centers also. The U.S. domestic growth continued on a massive scale, contributing to the worldwide progress of the economy. This example was important in leading towards higher operating standards coach class, economic class, and group fares. Europe regained its pre-war position during the 50s as the center of world's international air transport. There were regular scheduled air services between Europe and North America by 1960. In the post-war period, USSR for the first time appeared on the airline scene with the development of worldwide significance. In 1956, they put into service their Tupolev Tu-104 jet airliner. This was a straightforward development of the Tu-16 medium bomber, which had already been in service for years. Until now, USSR had lagged behind the West in their air transport development. With the appearance of Tu-104, the position started to change. Another major advance was the introduction of wide-body jets. Pan America played a key role in shaping the economics and eventual design of the new generation of jets. Pan American primary focus was always been to lower its operating cost by having higher block speeds, higher aircraft use, or higher load capacity. Pan America introduced Boeing's new aircraft called 747, which could carry 490 passengers. Despite the economies of scale, airline fares did not go down. The new planes were not faster than the earlier aircraft, but the capacity was considerably increased. The introduction of jet aircraft changed the ground infrastructure of airports. For example, airports across the United States had to build much longer runways with thicker concrete to support heavier planes. The early years of jet era coincided with widespread and profound changes in the way the average flyer experienced air travel. By 1958, over 1 million passengers flew to Europe, thus displacing the ocean transport. Because of fast-flying jet aircraft, by 1968, transatlantic passenger service had increased to 6 million passengers per year. The facility for the middle class to travel by air far and wide brought new social habits. By 1970s, the convenience of jet travel made vast international cultural exchange possible. The Soviet Union. Aeroflot, the Soviet state-owned airline, played a major role in reconstructing the Soviet Union after the war. Aeroflot was the first airline in the world to introduce regularly scheduled passenger jet service with its Tupolev Tu-104 jet in 1961. In 1961, Aeroflot introduced the huge Tu-114 high-speed turboprop aircraft on non-stop flights from Moscow to Tokyo and North America. By 1967, Aeroflot flew the most passenger miles in the world, and the Soviet aviation industry, represented by Aeroflot, was second only to American aviation industry. Aeroflot introduced the supersonic Tu-144 airliner in 1975. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 signaled the disappearance of Aeroflot. A new Aeroflot called Aeroflot Russian International Airlines was established in 1992, and now it operates flights both in domestic and international market. Another major advance was the introduction of wide-body jets. Pan America played a key role in shaping the economics and eventual design of the new generation of jets. Pan American primary focus was always been to lower its operating cost by having higher block speeds, higher aircraft use, or higher load capacity. Europe's airline after World War II. At the end of World War II, many countries had at their disposal a large number of new airplanes and airfields equipped with latest technology. Within 15 years of the end of the war, using these assets as a starting point, a number of international airlines became major participants in commercial aviation. In 1960 to 61, excluding US-owned airlines, the top airlines of the world were, in the order of passenger miles flown, Aeroflot of Soviet Union, Air France, the British Overseas Aircraft Corporation or BOAC, British European Airlines, BEA, Scandinavian Airline System, SAS, Alitalia of Italy, and Lufthansa of Germany. United Kingdom. The British aviation industry, mainly represented by BOAC and BEA, dominated the European international market after the World War II. Following the United States and Soviet Union, the British passenger airline industry was the third biggest in the world by 1960. After 1945, BOAC inherited dozens of key routes across the British Empire that it had established during the war. Although it was not profitable in the beginning, but by 1950 it gained strength. Once it had finished converting its military services to civilian operations, BOAC became the first airline to introduce passenger jet service with its de Havilland Comet 1 aircraft in 1952. The airlines weathered some hard times in the beginning because of the Comet's failure, but it bounced back in the 1960s. France. After the formation of Air France in 1933, the airlines created an extensive network of passenger routes in Europe, North Africa, and to other French colonies. Air France also helped French colonies to start their own air services. In the post-war period, the Air France established substantial network services all over Europe. By 1952, Air France grew bigger than either BOAC or BEA in terms of passenger miles flown, making it the largest non-American and non-Soviet Union airlines in the world. Air France was an early adherent of jet aviation and used both the British de Havilland Comet and the French-built SE-210 Caravelle aircraft in the 1950s. Germany. The first German post-war passenger airline, Deutsche Lufthansa, or called as DLF, effectively ceased its service at the end of the World War II. There were no commercial airline activity in the post-war period in Germany until 1950. In January 1953, the private investors and the government forces formed a new company known as Lufttag. In August 1954, the new company changed its name as Deutsche Lufthansa, more commonly known as Lufthansa. Lufthansa was one of the fastest growing airlines in Europe and rapidly expanded its services and aircraft fleet through the late 1950s and early 1960s. Like most of the major airlines of the world, it entered jet era in 1960s with Boeing 707. The era of commercial jet. The introduction of reliable jet planes such as the Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 in the late 50s ushered in a new era in commercial aviation, the jet era. These new planes offered more speed and comforts to passengers and were less expensive than piston-engine aircraft to operate, especially for long-distance routes. The advent of jet into commercial aviation profoundly changed the structure of civil air management and ground operations. It also brought changes in how airlines can operate in short-distance routes also. The proliferation of jets in commercial aviation revolutionized the air transport system. In the early 1960s, the passengers became used to jet services for flights over long and even medium distances. Consequently, airline operators faced the challenge of transferring the appeals of the new jets, their speed, comforts and reliability to much shorter routes. This was a great challenge to older jets since their high fuel consumption made them profitable only on long-distance travel at high constant cruising speed and high annual use. These things are not possible at short-distance travel. However, the advance in jet engine technology in the early 1960s, especially the introduction of the fan jet engine, forced airlines to reconsider their decision. The new level of reliability and efficiency as well as the low maintenance cost made jet attractive even for short distances. The credit for this invention should go to France airline company known as Caravelle, built by the Sud-Est Aviation. Air transport challenges. The most important challenges facing the aviation sector are the following four factors. A. Enhancing the capacity as there is greater demand for air travel. B. Maintaining environmental compatibility. C. Safety and security, particularly in the light of present-day terrorism. And D. Reducing the congestion and providing quality service. Reducing delay in air transport system is a decade-long public policy of aviation industry. However, in recent years, as air travel demand has escalated, likewise access to more reliable, convenient and affordable air transport has been a long-standing aim of many small countries. They are eager to attract more investment in aviation sector for developing basic infrastructures like construction of airport and increasing aviation system capacity and coverage through advanced technologies and other related development. Air travel safety and environmental compatibility. The challenge facing the air transport sector extends beyond the need to alleviate congestion and enhance service quality coverage. Two most important challenges are the need to ensure air travel system safety and environmental compatibility. While ensuring security is the foremost challenge facing the aviation sector, the efficient use and allocation of airspace and airport capacity should be taken on priority basis. Air transport development in India. Air transport made a humble beginning in 1911 in India when air mail operation commenced over a little distance of 10 kilometers between Allahabad and Naini. The British, French and Dutch airline companies introduced air transportation in India by 1929 and 1930. Indian National Airways was formed in 1933 and introduced air service between Karachi and Lahore, now in Pakistan. By the end of World War II, major cities like Karachi, Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, etc. were provided air services. In 1947, when India became independent, there were 4 airline companies, namely Tata Sons Limited, Indian National Airways, Air Services of India and Deccan Airways. By 1951, 4 more companies were started operating, namely Himalayan Aviation Limited, Airways India, Kalinga Airlines and Bharat Airways. In 1953, the Government of India nationalized air transport and formed 2 corporations, namely the Indian Airlines Corporation for domestic air services and Air India International for overseas services. Vayudut. Vayudut was introduced in 1981 to augment air transport in the country. It provided air services to remote places in the country, particularly in the northeastern region. It commenced its operation in February 1981 and provided air connectivity to 14 places in the country. Its major role was to provide air services to northeastern regions like Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Sikkim and Tripura. Pavan Hans. This was established to provide helicopter services. It mainly provided to oil companies like ONGC, Oil India, Enron Oil and Gas, etc. In 1990, private air taxis started its operation and played important role in providing passengers to Indian airlines from remote areas. As a result of opening up of our economy and liberalization, in 1991, the Government of India permitted air transport to be operated by private people. At present, there are a number of private airlines operating both at national and international levels. Air transport growth in India. The IATA has announced industry performance stability for 2015, showing the growth in aviation sector, particularly in domestic market. India is the fastest growing country in the world with 18.5%, followed by Russia 11.9%, China 9.7% and United States 5.4%. India is poised to the world's largest aviation market by 2030. Viewers, with this we come to the end of today's episode, the development of air transport. I hope you all had a good time learning. Until next time, it's goodbye from all of us here.